Hello everybody and welcome to episode 5 of Board With Each Other, the board gaming podcast that looks at tabletop gaming through the lens of playing as a couple, playing with a good friend, or in the case of this game, perhaps the most intelligent of your cats. My name's Simpson, I'm your host today, and I'm joined as ever by my lovely wife, co-host and player 2, Hannah Kelly.
Hi guys.
So today we are going to be talking about Calico. Calico is a abstract, competitive puzzle tile laying game. I think that's enough descriptives. Published by AEG, and it has the theme of basically sewing together a calico quilt that will attract nearby cats.
Sounds suitable for your granny? Possibly. Also, probably a little bit more to it than that.
Yeah, as I will get into. It's one of those games that appears very, very deceptively cutesy and simple on the surface, but is actually quite deep. How play works is when you start the game, you basically have a playmat. Each player has a playmat and plays from 1 to 4. And on that playmat, you have 3 buttons. They're not really buttons, they're sort of like scoring tiles, which are randomly chosen. You get a choice to pick 3 out of 4 from a random pool of about 7 tiles in total. And those scoring tiles basically denote what it is that you're trying to do in the game. So they'll have 2 victory point values on them. The first one for getting particular matching pairs, triplets or quads of either a colour or a pattern on each of the tiles. And a second victory point value for doing both. But they sort of change configuration. So you'll have one that'll say like A, B, B, C, C, which means three pairs basically. And you manage to pair both colours and patterns, you will then get the full whack of victory points in the tiles surrounding it. There are some quite interesting ones. There's one that wants you to match nothing, which is actually harder than it looks. So no colours or patterns the same. And how gameplay basically works is on your turn you will place 1 tile onto your player board, and then if it triggers anything, so one of the things it can trigger is if you've got 3 colours in a row, you get a button that you can place on, and you could also attract a cat. The cats are drawn randomly from a pool of 5 at the start of the game. You get 3, and each one will have 2 patterns associated with them. And they will have a configuration that those patterns need to be in. So some of them will be a shape, so like 5 in a row, basically. Some will just say a number plus, so any sort of shape configuration of those particular shapes in that will then allow you to place a cat on your quilt. The cats are worth different victory points values, depending on how complicated or difficult they are to attain. And again, at the start of the game, you choose randomly whether the cats are going to be in a pattern sequence or in a simple number of them. There is basically like a marketplace in the middle of the table, which is comprised of 3 tiles. So you place one and then draw one of those 3 to replace it in your hand. You have 2 tiles in your hand at any one time, and you just go back and forth. You go back and forth until you both filled up your quilts, and then you calculate victory points at the end.
It's also probably worth noting that Al mentioned buttons, so if you get 3 colours in a row, you get a button, which I think is a fruit. If you get the full number of fruits
of
or
which
colours...
there are 6. There are 6 colours and 6 patterns.
No, yes, six colours, then you get a rainbow badge, and that's an addition.
Yeah, that's worth additional points.
Yeah.
So while it appears quite simple, there's actually quite a number of things you can sort of be chasing after during the game. It's not it's not as simple as you need to get colours matching or you need to get patterns matching. There's a lot more. You can sort of decide to try and go for the cats, you can decide to go for the buttons, you can decide to go for your scoring tiles. There's quite a lot of options, which is good because you quickly run out of options, I found, in this game.
It starts off as wonderful, I could do anything, then, oh fuck, I screwed up.
Yeah.
Need to change plans now.
Yeah, it's one of those games that you need to think about 5 or 6 turns ahead, I think, if you really want to play it optimally, which I very rarely do. I usually mess up within the first third of the game and then have to spend the rest of the game sort of trying to catch up with it. But I guess that's abstract games, really. I mean, what are your thoughts on this kind of thing in general?
So this is, I think, the first game that I've really played like this.
Yeah, I think the only thing similar we've played is Hive.
Oh, yeah, see, Hive I did not get on with at all. I found that far too complicated, and there was a second level to it as well, so you have to mount other pieces.
Yeah.
But actually, I found this quite straightforward. It was something new that I'd not done before, and yeah, I've found it really good. It's also got one of the best, probably, starting rules that I've ever come across, which is whoever petted the cat last gets to go first, which is usually me. Cat's not very fond of you, I don't think.
I think that's a lot unfair. But yes, it's an incredibly easy game to pick up the rule set for. You could explain it to somebody in 5 minutes, I reckon.
Yeah.
But that simplicity hides as is often the case with these games, a huge amount of depth. I think there's levels of strategic depth that we haven't begun to scratch the surface of, because I think when we play, we're so fixated on what we're doing on the board that you don't really pay any attention to what the other person's doing.
Until the end.
Until the end, yeah. But I imagine once you get really good at it, you're probably looking at the other board state quite a lot and trying to,
But I also think that because of that, you don't have to play it with, your full attention and focus. Actually, you can step back a little bit, play a couple of tiles, go off, talk to somebody, come back, ask you, so it doesn't have to be that all in.
Yeah, it's quite a gentle game to play in that sense, I suppose, but yeah.
I mean, you can't get really angry when you are playing with cute cats and quilts.
It's hard to, because they're so cute. It can be frustrating at times, but usually I can find it a bit frustrating, but that's usually just like, why are you being so boneheaded? Why did you do that 3 turns ago? You've ruined everything, Al. The conversations I have with myself while playing. Yeah, I mean, we'll get onto some of the aspects of, the competitive nature of it, I guess, during our scoring criteria. But, it is a game that you can probably make as competitive as you would like, as it doesn't sort of force you into it.
Do you want to mention where you got it from?
Yeah, I mean, this game kicked off my charity shop addiction. I've always seen posts online of people getting very lucky in charity shops, and I just thought, there would never be anything in there. And I walked into one of our local ones, and they had this sitting on the shelf, sealed and unpunched for £2.50.
I mean, I do have to be honest. When you did bring it home, saying to me, "Anna, I've scored like the most amazing game ever," and I was like, "Oh, really excited. Maybe it's Gloomhaven." And no, it turned out to be a box with a cat on it. I did look at you and think,
You were proven wrong, though,
I
weren't
was
you?
proven wrong. I really was. I take it all back. And now I encourage you to go on a weekly basis.
Yes, now I check on a weekly basis. I've had a few more scores over the past few months. So I think we'll put up a picture on our social media of the stuff I've acquired. But yeah, I think I've said it on a previous episode. But do check your local charity shops, people. You never know. You can get some really, really good bargains.
So how long do you reckon it runs for?
I'd probably say about half an hour.
Yeah.
Give or take. But I think it's quite a malleable one, because it depends how long. I can imagine people sitting and having a very long think about their turns with this one.
Or even actually, because I'm going to get onto this, but because it's quite easy it doesn't take up a huge amount of space, actually you could play a few turns and come back to it if that was like chess.
Yeah, you could, and you could just leave the board there and go off and do something else and come back to it.
Yeah, that's the way you want to play.
Yeah, I would say if you're just playing a regular sort of clip, I go probably about half an hour at the most. So it is fairly quick to play.
Yeah.
I guess just before we go into scoring, one of the things I always tend to address with every game is expansions, and as far as I know, this one doesn't have any. There are a couple of promo extra cats that I'm aware of that I think were part of the Kickstarter version, which you could probably pick up on eBay if you're interested in expanding anyway, but I don't think you could expand it in any other way.
I don't think so, but also who doesn't love more cats?
Well, yes, I know. It's true that. I mean, there's a line.
I think Al is very aware that if I could, I would probably have about 15 cats.
Yes, there's always a danger.
Yes.
Yeah.
Maybe I can live vicariously through this game and get 15 cats. I've got to catch them all.
So a strong theme for you then.
Yes, cats. I like cats.
I do too. Not as much as that, but yeah, I do too.
Hence why you never get to go first in the game. Me, I've always petted the cat.
Fair enough. Right, so should we go on scoring then?
Yep. So, as ever, we'll split our categories down into general scoring, so just how the game plays, etc., and then we'll move on to our couples rating. So our first category under general scoring is the components.
Yes. Do you want to talk about it first, or would you like me to jump in?
So, I think it's a fairly easy, quick game to set up. Everything comes, it's got baggies, but nice fabric baggies to match, obviously, the theme of the game. Tiles are fairly small and decently sized. The boards are really lovely, they're quite thick. Yeah,
I'd echo all of that. The player boards are really, very nice. Everything comes out and goes back into the box really quickly and easily. The big sort of cloth bag for the tiles that comes with it is really nice. All the cards are fairly... The board tiles are fairly weighty. So yeah, it's a generally nice package.
Yep. And aesthetically, I mean, it is an aesthetic game,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, it's about building a patchwork quilt, and it's pretty.
It is very, very pretty.
It's pretty to look at, and also it's got cats. Have I emphasised enough how much I like cats?
You're just going to give it a 10 for everything because it's cat-based.
I mean, there are some lower scores on it.
Well, I'm going to give it an 8 for components because I think it is really nicely made and it's a nice package. It's easy to set up and strip down. So 8 for me.
Yep, so I gave it a 6, mainly because, you know, who wouldn't like some cat figures?
Cat miniatures.
Cat miniatures. Yeah, okay, so
Maybe
you like big tanks.
Yeah.
We established this.
Yeah.
I like cat miniatures,
Okay,
apparently.
all right. Well, maybe the second edition if you write to them. Shall we go on to complexity then?
Yeah.
So we don't give a game a high or low score on this just because it's complex or easy. It's more around how much the complexity supports the gameplay and sort of the designer's vision as such, and how much the complexity suits the game. It is not a very, very complex game at all, but it doesn't need to be. And as I said earlier, I think there's a huge amount of depth to it. There's a huge amount of various configurations and what have you, of scoring buttons and whatnot, and what you're trying to go for. So I think the rule set fits it just fine. So I give it a 7.
Yeah, I would also say that when the rules are really easy to understand, I mean, it's not complex as you said, but the rules are really easy to follow. And there's also like not a legacy version, but like a lifetime achievement award.
Oh yeah, there's like an achievement tracker at the back of the rulebook, isn't there?
Which is quite nice, and I think that's really
nice
lovely,
touch.
especially when you're playing 2-player, that you can you have to keep the same player mats and play them throughout.
Yeah.
But that's a really nice sort of added
thing
or aspect to it.
Yeah, it adds a bit of sort of permanence to it, I guess, and a bit of linking between the games that you play. You know, you had a game, but I finally hit the score threshold, or I've done this, and I get to tick it off on my achievement tracker.
What I would say is that it's not, in my opinion, particularly well balanced. So what I'm going to say about that is Al talks about at the beginning, you randomly pick 3 objective tiles, if you like, and then you have to match the patterns and or the colours. For a good 2 or 3 games, I was really hunting after that getting both. And I don't feel that the payoff for that was perhaps maybe as much as it should have been.
Yeah, fair enough.
It's really hard to do. It's really hard to achieve.
You're referring to getting both the patterns and the colours on one scoring tile. Yeah, I would agree. The extra number of victory points that you get for doing both.
It's like 3. And
I think you may as well. You're better off basically sacking that off, from what we found anyway, and going after something else like a cat, for instance.
But my completionist nature and my desire to want to do that overrides the button collecting, so you know.
Yeah, no, I get that completely. Because it's so hard to do, it seems like it should be like the easy, not the easy path, but the obvious path to victory.
And when I think I first did it, I was expecting to get both the scores.
Yeah, but you only get one of them.
But you only get one of them. You only get the higher one. And I was a bit put out by that, but yet I still continue to do it every time because I want to.
Yeah. So yeah, what did you give it for complexity?
I also want to talk about analysis paralysis here.
Oh yes, of course.
Yeah, so obviously, those of you who've listened to us before will know that I tend to get locked in my own brain trying to puzzle out 5, 6, 7 moves ahead. I would actually say that despite on paper this really ticking all those boxes for me and making me overthink, I don't find that at all.
No, you don't. It really surprised me. This is one that I expected to really get to you in that sense. I think I'm worse than you on this one. I think I take longer on my turns than you do sometimes.
And I think that's because you only have 2 tiles in front of, so you only pick 2 and then you have a choice of which the 2 that you play, and then you get to pick from a flop in the middle. So you can really only think, yes, you might have a longer term goal and longer term strategy, but you can really only pick with what's on the table at the time.
Yeah.
So I think for me, it kind of locks that down, which was really refreshing because I did panic to begin with, thinking, oh my god, this is going to take up all my RAM.
Yeah. No, I was actually really surprised that it didn't hit you, where it does hit me quite badly. Although I will say it's worse in the first half of the game. I think in the second half of the game you get a bit locked down. At least I feel I get a bit sort of locked down.
Any mistakes.
Yes, fine, okay, there might be. But I tend to start slower and get quicker as the game goes on. But that could just be my boneheaded nature of playing, as Hannah says.
But based on all of that, I would score it an 8.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I gave it a 7, so I think that's fine. I think the reason I gave it a 7 is that I feel like, as you said, some of the victory stuff is more difficult. The payoff isn't there for it, and I feel like that's almost an added level of complexity that doesn't need to be there.
Yes,
or is unrewarded, so that caused me to shave a few points off, basically. But aside from that, I think the complexity suits the game.
So then our next category is shelf life. So we're talking about things like value for money, replayability, those sorts of things. How do you score it?
I mean, I think that these kind of abstract games, you'll find people that can play these for 2 decades. Because once you find one or a group of them that you really like, it's always a nice, easy thing to throw down and go, right, okay, let's just have a game of this. It's half an hour. We always enjoy it. I mean, what's chess's shelf life? You know, it's that kind of thing. It's mileage may vary, really. It depends how much you like it. But I think because of their abstract nature, that's one of the things that kind of makes it infinitely replayable if you still enjoy it. I think for me, it's always around progression. Do I feel like I'm getting better at it as I play for these kind of games anyway? And this one I'm not too sure I do yet. I think time will tell.
I completely disagree with that. So absolutely, I think you have. If you compare our scores, because again, we've tracked our scores as we've gone along, and that's part of the options in the game. But actually, last time we played, we had the highest scoring game on both our sides.
That's true, yeah.
And you beat me.
Yeah, maybe. Okay, so maybe I am getting better the more I play, and I think that's key. I think if I feel that progression, then it'll keep my interest in it alive.
Yeah. That said, it's not going to be the game that I'm reaching for first time.
No.
But also, that's probably why it will hold its shelf life better than...
But it is a great game if we play something a bit more involved on an evening, and we finished earlier than expected. It's one of those that we'll reach for and go, we can fit in a game of this, can't we?
Or sometimes when we're just, I'm not quite sure, should we play this or this? We'll have a quick game of Calico or something else.
Like that, yeah.
Just to get into the swing of things and decide what we want to play.
Yeah,
and that works really
evening
well.
Off, yeah. Gets the brain flowing, doesn't it? So yeah, I give it a 7 for this, but I think mileage will vary.
Yeah, samesies. 7.
Yeah, okay. All right. And finally, fun and emergent storytelling.
Yeah. Have we had any crazy stories about cats as a result of this game? I don't know that we did.
No, I mean, from an emergent storytelling, it's so quilt, cat will pitch up. So another quilt, cat will pitch up. I mean, you'd probably watch, like, an entire movie franchise based on that. But
I would. I mean, in my head, I've got narratives going. Like, there's, like, you know, secondary characters. There's been, like, a plot twist, a murder.
But as a grim, dark sci-fi fan, I don't know if it really pushes my buttons. But, you know, it's cute.
It is. I do enjoy playing it.
Yeah.
I do. And I have a good time playing it. Like, don't know that it's going to be one of those ones that I rave about.
No. I mean, this is kind of tied to the last point. I have a feeling that my rating for this might go up the more in control I feel feel. Because I find it very, very satisfying when things do go right, and I execute a plan. I think, which is why I managed to do. Now you mentioned it the last time that we played. I had something in mind. I managed to execute it. That was really satisfying. So I think in the first few games where I'm literally just sort of going and just putting things down on the board, perhaps less fun. So I think my score may go up as my competency increases, I guess.
Yeah,
and I can see that for a few people.
Yeah, and again, as you learn more about the game and about playing strategies and stuff, actually, yes, no, I can see that. I mean, I scored it a 5 just because it's not that thing that I'm going to be first reaching for, and it's not going to be the thing that I'm telling all my friends about. Oh my god, we've just got Calico.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do really enjoy it. I can see us playing it for a long time, and I'm also really excited to teach the kid.
Yeah, it's one of those because there's no reading involved or anything like that. If you do have a young child, I'd say sort of 5, 6-ish, they could probably learn it. So yeah, quite looking forward to that. But yeah, I also gave it a 5, but I do think that might go up slightly, as I think it ties a little bit into the competitiveness as well. It's a very where we are at our skill level at the moment. It's an exceptionally non-competitive game. And sometimes when something's not a co-op, I do need a little bit of bite there. And I think they could be. I think once you get good and you're watching each other's boards...
I've done it to you. I've done it to you, and that's been really good fun.
You could have some massive gotcha moments, which I think would be quite fun. But I'm so wrapped up in my own board state most of the time that hasn't really presented itself. And again, that would probably knock my score up 1 or 2 if that had happened a bit more often. So again, it might just be speaking to my skill level of where I am with the game. So yeah, 5 from me as well.
Cool.
Okay, so that gives us an average of 6.6. We always round up, so that's a 7 for the general rating, which I think is quite high. I think the components has definitely knocked that up a bit. If you take that out of the equation, then you're probably looking at more like a 6.
Yep. Agreed.
Right, shall we go on to our 2-player couple ratings?
Yeah. So our first category is table talk. So that's how much interactivity there is, how much dead time there is, getting to know you. And there's very little dead time, I don't find. Again, if you perhaps maybe you were a kind of person that thought more about... I don't mean you specifically. I mean you, dear listener. Like to spend more time thinking...
Shade!
Thinking about your turns, and obviously probably there would be some more dead time. But actually it's fairly fluid.
Yeah, I mean... Out of all the games that we've ever played...
I know what you can say.
This is the one that has had the most silence. There have been entire games of this that we played without saying anything. I don't know if you've noticed.
Yes, no, I have. But I also think that's about where we are. And again, if we were more experienced, a game of chess, for example, we could just take a step back and have a chat.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I guess. But I guess for me, part of this category has always been about the game facilitating that.
Yeah.
And I think what you're describing is you have to take a step away from the game to have a chat, almost. Yeah. And I think when you're talking about it for playing as a couple, particularly with somebody you're trying to get to know, I don't
want to get to know
think
you.
It's great. Well, you already know me.
I know, that's fine. The silence is golden.
So yeah, I think for that reason, I don't think this works very well at all in that sense.
I mean, we talk about FOMO and that later on, but I also don't think having more players would necessarily help. We'll come to that later.
We'll come to that now in that scoring. So yeah, I mean, I've actually given it my lowest score so far, which is a 2 for this.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's brutally low. I gave it a 5.
Okay. Is that because rather than talking to me, you just like to think about cats?
Yeah, maybe I'm having this whole narrative in my head about the cats and about attracting cats.
And this just gives you the space to do that.
Yeah, maybe.
Be alone with your cat thoughts.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, all right. So that's the current... where your relationship is at currently?
But how can you rate a game with cats on them and this number lower than a 5?
I can definitely rate it lower than a 5 when it doesn't fit the bill for this category.
My score stands.
Okay, that's fine. We will leave it there. 2 from me.
5 from me.
What would you say about competitiveness then? I know we've touched on this.
Well, that's really tricky, and I didn't know how to rate it. I think we've talked about this before with Scythe, actually. You know, this idea that you're off on your own with your own playmat, doing your own little thing, and come the end of it, score it. and we'll see who wins. I think the way in which that we're playing, we don't particularly look at other people's play mats. I have a vague awareness as to how many buttons you're getting, and if you're getting a lot. But I don't feel like there's that interactivity, and there's that I'm fighting for you over resources, for example.
Yeah.
Or I do fight you sometimes over tiles, and get quite cross because you're taking the tile that I want. But also, you don't know that you're taking the tile that I want. No,
I don't. I think that's where this one's interesting. I mean, as a basic game, totting up scores one against the other, fine. That would kind of be sort of middle of the road territory for me. I do think there is potential for it to be quite competitive once you get really good. So I've been loath to give it a low score, because I think that's more of a me problem. I think as competency increases, it has the potential to be quite, not nasty, but quite back and forth, and you would be screwing over the other player just as much as you were doing your own thing.
What I would point out, though, is that in terms of your tiles and your spare spaces on the mat, so the ones that aren't immediately completing those tile objective tiles, you've only probably got about maybe 6 spare tiles.
Yeah.
So actually taking another tile just to screw someone over isn't actually in your interest.
Yeah, potentially, unless you've obviously gone for the same thing.
Yeah.
There's that as well. Or trying to... Yeah, there's levels to it, I think, that would sort of bump it up. And for that reason, I've given it a 6, because I think there's a potential there.
Yeah, so I've given it a 5, mainly for that reason. I just think, yes, probably if we were better at it, you would probably play a bit more competitively like that. But I still think fundamentally, that's not going to do you any favours, and I think it would come bite you in the arse eventually. Yeah,
and I guess unlike Scythe, there is the ability, if you paid attention, you could pretty much see how somebody's scoring during the game, because everything's free information. You could tot it up, as it were, and know whether you're winning or losing. So there is that, and again, we don't do that, but you could if you wanted to.
Yeah.
So what about scalability, FOMO? Would more players make it better?
Yeah, so this is fundamentally, would we find adding a third person or fourth to it make it any better? And I think absolutely not.
No, I would agree with you completely. I think all it would achieve is slowing the game down.
Yeah. Again, because you're not competing over resources, I mean, I suppose there would be more rotation in the flop.
Yeah.
You don't call it a flop, what do you call it?
Flops are in poker. Marketplace is usually what it's called in this kind of setup.
Yeah, so marketplace, so you'd have a higher turnover of tiles. And what I have noticed is sometimes when we are after the same tiles, actually that flop...
it can be very static.
It can become really static and a bit of a dud. So actually maybe that would help. Aside from that, because you're playing on your own...
Yeah.
I don't think adding a third would help in any way, shape, or form.
No, I don't think so. I mean, there is the possibility that if you played with like 4 players and 3 of you were all going for the same pattern or colour, it could turn into like a fight in a phone booth kind of scenario. But I think people would quickly sort of back out and go for something else. So
I'm really stuck on the expression "fight in a phone booth."
You've never heard that before?
No, absolutely not. It's a stupid place to have a fight. Don't do that.
But let's not get you started on idioms, please. So yeah, I gave this a really high score because I gave it an 8 because I don't think adding more people would essentially add much to the game. I gave it an 8 as opposed to a 10 because I do feel like there's probably some strategic possibilities there with 3 or 4 players, but it's not something I would reach for. If I was playing with 3 or 4 players, it would be very far down the list.
Yeah, so I gave it a 10 because probably out of all our games, especially the ones that definitely suit 2-player, I don't think I would even offer that to other people. I think
fair enough.
I think it absolutely works perfectly as a 2-player game. I think it would be another
Okay.
So I give it a 10.
Alright, so that's 2 and that's 10 kind of balance out each other and we end up with a 6. So general score of 7 and 2-player score of 6.
Yeah, that seems fair.
Yeah.
I think probably the general score does seem a bit high.
Yeah, it does seem to have come out a little bit higher. I feel like the components and the general cutesiness of the game has probably bumped it up a little bit higher than it should be. But there you have it. That is Calico.
If you like cats, probably should play it.
Also abstract games. It's a good abstract game.
Cats.
Cats and abstract. Abstract cats.
Oh, God, no. Can you imagine Picasso cats? That would just be awful.
So, thank you very, very much for joining us. We have all of our usual social media platforms, so Insta, Twitter, Facebook, and the Facebook discussion group. So, if you want to engage with us over there, I look forward to hearing from some of you. If you would leave us a rating on your podcast platform of choice, that would be massively appreciated. As long as it's a 5, obviously, nothing less than a 5.
5-star man.
But yeah, I think next time we are going to be talking about Eon's End, which I'm very much looking forward to. So until next time, be good to each other, have fun, and play loads of games.